faculty member, and I am the director of the library. That's quite all right.
Do you like Phil?
I do like Phil. Lloyd works for Phil.
Actually, I've met you.
Oh, yes.
A couple of years ago, I think.
We met you, we shared a beer together down at
You want to do it again?
at Boulder, right?
Probably.
Yeah, Boulder, Colorado. Right. We went to the Irish pub.
And you remember.
Yeah, you had two more than I did.
What can I say?
Maybe more experience. Okay, the official time has started, so let me introduce myself. I'm Vicki Szymczak. I am the Law Library Director at Brooklyn Law School, and I am going to speak to you today about sort of like a case study about our library and why we decided to leave innovative interfaces as our commercial ILS, and why we chose to go with Koha and outsource our support to ByWater Solutions. I'm going to tell you what did not work with our migration. We're still doing our migration, although we are live now, and our end users are using our OPAC. It's not perfect yet, so you'll see some development that still needs to get done, but we are functional. And I'll conclude by showing you what needs to be done, and I'd like to take you to our new OPAC and also to our staff module where you can see how we process the information and order materials and keep track of things like that. So as I alluded to before the official program started, I chose that picture. This is supposed to be. Yeah. I chose this picture on purpose. I could have chosen a nice superhighway and things like that, but going open source from a commercial vendor, particularly innovative interfaces that has very interesting coding behind it that you don't get to see until you try and extract your data. It's more like traveling a dirt road. And it's a little bit lonely because, as far as I know, Brooklyn Law School is the only law school running an open source ILS right now. Although we are certainly not the only academic library doing so, and definitely not the only library in this country or in other parts of the world which have been much more friendly to adapt an open source ILS. And I'm going to show you some maps a little bit later on. So. You know, in the end, if you could just take a look at this and read it while I talk to you. In the end, the goal was to make the library catalog a more friendly place for the people who use our facilities. And we've had our students using the OPAC, I don't know, Karen, what would you say? Karen works with me at Brooklyn, about a week and a half? Yeah. About a week and a half. This is the third comment that we've received from a student during the summer period since we allowed them onto the OPAC. And I'm wondering how many people ever had a student say that they really liked the library catalog, right? So, you know, I want to show you this because it was a rocky road and there was some really horrific parts to the migration. And I don't want you to get discouraged and just get up and leave before I finish, because it does have a happy ending. All right? So before I get started, I just want to point to some resources that I found helpful in case you want to investigate the possibility of going open source. And so obviously I am not Marshall Breeding, but he is the person that you want to read if you want to learn more about taking your ILS out of the commercial space. And this is his website, librarytechnology.org. He is an academic librarian. And even, you know, if you just want to get started, there's a little video that he did recently, just this past May, where he's talking about open source and what it can do for a library and what are its shortfalls. And I think it's only about 30 or 40 minutes long. It's a really, it's a very good introduction to the whole idea, so I would recommend it. In addition, These were a couple of articles that I read while I was making my decision about moving out of innovative and going open source. To tell you the truth, the last 6 months I haven't kept track of any writing that has been done. So there might be some things that are more current, but I have just sort of been focusing on actually doing it, and it is time-consuming. So, if you're considering this, there are some things I would recommend. One, make sure you realize it is time-consuming and you don't have any other major projects on your plate because you want to give it a lot of attention. Two, you need a mad scientist on your staff who's willing to do this with you. So I had a mad scientist. Her name is Maria Okonska, and she's the manager of Bibliographic Services. So you need somebody like that to help you cheerlead. And three, you have to have an adventurous staff. It's not just good enough for you to be adventurous, but your staff has to be willing to do this. If you don't have buy-in from the low level to the top level, it's not going to work because your workflow is going to change, the way you think about doing research on the OPAC is going to change, and the way you actually do processing in the back end is going to change. So, there's a lot that goes on in addition to the basic migration, if there is such thing as a basic migration. So, why did we decide to do this? Anybody working on innovative here? All right, so this ugly screen should be very familiar to you, right? And this was really one of the big reasons why I wanted to leave innovative. Not so much to go open source, but why I wanted to leave innovative. I don't think it lives up to its name. It's not really innovative. And the problem I'm having is that I have people, 20-somethings, 30-somethings, coming to work in the library to do the processing of the material. And this is not their world. And it costs a lot of money to send somebody for training on innovative. And I can't afford to send everybody. I can barely afford to send my department heads. And it costs a lot to bring somebody into your library. So, with every generation of training, internally, the training becomes less and less good, if that's a way to put it, because you're losing information as you pass that information down. So the interface is not familiar to the staff, and that's bad for two reasons. One, they can't transfer any of their life knowledge from the other systems that they use. They're very accustomed to web-based systems, and you could sort of transfer knowledge between systems, say, oh, I did that in that database, I could do this in this database, I did this on this site, I could do this on this site. So they're not able to transfer that knowledge. And it also, because it's so unfamiliar and requires special training, it inhibits their ability to be creative or to think of how could I make my piece of the puzzle work better or work more smoothly? What can I contribute back to the library? Because they're sort of stuck in this box and they don't know what else to do with the box, and I can't afford to send them to training, and there we are. So it might sound superficial, but it's ugly, and it creates barriers, not only between the staff members, but between the professional staff members as well, because the public services librarians are working mainly with the OPAC, and they don't have access to this side. And they don't know how to use this side because it's so foreign to them. So there's a language barrier that was created between the public services people and the technical services people. And I wanted to break down that barrier. So those were some of the reasons that got me started. We wanted something that had a more familiar interface, right? And we wanted something with better customer support, something that wasn't costing us thousands of dollars to get trained on. And when I'm talking about customer support, I'm also talking about when we ran into glitches in the database. Our database was built back in the early 1990s, and it had not been audited since then. Right? So the database had some faulty data in it. I needed to do something. I either needed to have it audited and reloaded or reprogrammed in some way. Innovative Interfaces was going to charge me a lot of money to do that. So I was looking at that. And in the meantime, I was running into bugs with my reports and my lists, and the searching was kind of flaky. And when I would call customer support, which is 3 hours behind New York, they would call me back at 6 o'clock at night, our time, when everybody, including myself, had left. So we were always playing phone tag. And then when you would get on the phone with them, it would be, well, let me look in the manual here and see if I can find anything. And no, I already looked at the manual. Can you do something else? So I learned that, at least for me, my commercial vendor was populating its customer support with entry-level people. And I heard from an inside rep there that once the entry-level person had proven themselves and their ability to master innovative interfaces, they were promoted out of customer support into management. And this was why I was getting poor customer support. So that really infuriated me because I was paying them a lot of money and they weren't giving me customer support. And I was having trouble building reports. Some other reasons I wanted to get away from innovative. That very ugly screen requires you to have software loaded onto your laptop if you wanted to access your database from elsewhere. It was problematic connecting for whatever reason. So I wanted something where if I went to Milwaukee and somebody from tech services called and said, hey, there's something going on, could you take a look? I could just pop open my laptop and take a look to see what was going on. Or in our situation, which happened this past winter, we had our acquisitions librarian have a knee replacement, and he was out for 3 or 4 months. It would have been so much easier if we had a web-based system that he could log into easily. He had so much trouble connecting through Innovative. So anywhere access was important. And also on this list, I have server independence. In our library, there's a little room with a little server in it. It's the server room for Innovative. And it's hard for me to justify having this server in this separate room, and the rest of the school is running on Blade technology, and I'm sitting there with this box in a room next to the fax machine. Now, I will say that I have learned Innovative will offer cloud hosting for you. But I didn't learn that because customer service told me that. I learned that just from sort of talking to other innovative libraries and people mentioning it to me. So the information was never forthcoming to me. When I did inquire about cloud hosting for Innovative, it actually was going to cost me more money to have my library system hosted in the cloud as opposed to hosted locally, which is completely contrary to the business models that I'm familiar with cloud computing. So that also turned me off. Now, I don't want to say that Innovative doesn't do good things. Obviously, it's a good system. So many people use it. So many law libraries use it. It's very strong in some ways. But I did want to point out, from technical services standpoint, the problems that we were having with Innovative. And I don't want to limit it to that part of our function. So I just want to talk about what our OPAC looked like. And I don't mean for this to be I'm bashing Innovative. I'm just trying to give you a point of comparison so you see where we came from, what we were shooting for, and where we are right now. So you see this is, we're an Innovative library until the end of the month. And this is the entry point to our catalog. And you see it has a very clean look. We made it clean on purpose because we felt a clean screen was a clean mind. It wasn't cluttered. We've added a lot of links to other services down here. We have a Perl script running to extract our new titles. And otherwise, it looks pretty much like most search screens, right? Oh, one thing I wanted to mention. There's the Patron account here. So we had to log into our accounts using our barcode number that's on the bottom of our ID cards that is really, really tiny. And it's the only reason why anybody would have to know their barcode number. The rest of the school was working on Active Directory. Everybody signed in with their AD accounts. So for this, we had to use this silly barcode, which was annoying, which meant nobody accessed their Patron account. Okay. So this is our, our basic entry point. This is our results screen, which isn't bad. I mean, it does a lot of good things, but it is sort of old-fashioned looking. It doesn't have a current feel to it. So aesthetically, the students don't find it appealing aesthetically, and it sort of turns them off. Some other problems we have with the display: when we have an internet resource, we can't display, I think it's the 952 field. Is there any technical services people here? So it's a 952 field that has the URL? 852. Oh, that's close. Right. 852 field can't display here, so you can't go directly from the results list out to the resource. That was, we felt, a barrier for our students. We added some extra services over on the side. We did a lot of customization with no help from Innovative, I might add. This was all done internally and with the help of other Innovative libraries. Okay. One thing we really liked about our screen was the Bib Record. We added all of these services on the side, all of those services on the side, and we have our table of contents there. We don't want to give this type of information up, and the same is true when we're looking at a serial, right? So for a continuing resource, all of these fields here, these are our 856 fields, I think. What we have, what our holdings are, we have it displayed in the Bib Record, and we also wanted to move that out to the results list, and we were having trouble with that. So the fact that we have it is good, but it wasn't, and we couldn't get it to appear in the same place. Okay, so some other things that we added here that we wanted to bring to the fore, and I can't see there, if you could see it there. These are our sharing links. So if you wanted to, I don't know, post things to your Facebook page or Delicious account, whatever, those are your sharing features over there. And that was as far as we could get with the next generation library catalog without spending some additional money with Innovative. Right? So to make it look like Home Depot, to make it look with the refinement features on the left and to sort by price and whatever have you with the appropriate narrowing features for the library, such as author and date and things like that. It was going to cost us, I believe it was another $15,000 to Innovative to use their Encore system. Does anybody use Encore here? I see one hand. So, I looked at a few of the Encore libraries. I wasn't particularly happy with the search results in Encore. New York Public Library uses it. It's confusing to use. We did a little focus group in the library with the professional staff. We showed people different types of discovery platforms, and Innovative was not the favorite in any of our categories. So we didn't want to spend money there. One thing we did spend money on was to create an RSS feed out of the catalog. So we have a few. You see the RSS feeds that we have running. One I mentioned, we have the new books. And then we have the new books that we get organized by subject specialty. So the librarians who are liaison to faculty members taught the faculty how to use an RSS reader and subscribe them to the feed that was appropriate for their subject area so that they get their materials ASAP. And it really has boosted our circulation of new books to over 60%. It was a very good investment. But we had to pay Innovative to run an RSS feed, which was really annoying. So in addition to what we wanted on our workflow side, on the staff side, on the OPAC, we wanted an integrated discovery platform. One of the things I failed to mention with Encore is that it decoupled the end user from their account. So you couldn't be an Encore and then go back to your Patron account. You had to go back to your classic version of Innovative. So it decoupled you from your actual account information. We wanted it to be integrated. We wanted more customization opportunities. We wanted to add the ability to tag and to use lists and to be able to share that information internally. We wanted to integrate our workflow with YBP and Zotero. We wanted to get rid of the barcode and use Active Directory like all the big boys. And we wanted to do everything that Innovative already did for us, that nice display of those special fields that people find helpful when they're searching the catalog. So this was all the stuff that we wanted, and I have to mention the money factor, right? So everybody's under budget cuts. My decision was not made because my budget was cut in such a way that I needed to find an alternative to paying this money to Innovative. That money was in my budget, and it actually is still in my budget for next year in case my project failed. And I would strongly urge everybody to follow that tip if you plan to go open source. But what I mean by money is the business plan that my commercial vendor provided to me. I didn't feel like I was getting the best bang for the buck. And I wanted a better product, and I didn't want to pay, you know, to be honest, I would pay as much if it was a better product, but I didn't think I needed to. I didn't think it was that difficult to do. And so my manager of Bibliographic Services got tired of me complaining and said, why don't we go open source? Right? And you know, this part of library services doesn't get spoken about that much. We talk about how our publishers are digging us for so much money and how we have virtually no control over the cost of our materials. But I sort of feel the same thing applies to the other side of the coin. We're spending so much money to support an ILS system that's antiquated, right? It was built in the 1980s, and they just keep layering things on top of it to make it a very complicated and unfriendly system. And so open source, what does it mean? It means that the ILS we're going to adopt is not going to be like Innovative. Right? So if you're going to do this, you have to realize you're going to change your workflow. You're going to change how you do things. It also means you're going to be sharing your information with people you don't know. People not only in your city or in your state, but in other states and in other parts of the world. And that could either be exciting or scary. It depends on the personality of your staff. I don't know if open source is right for everybody. I do know that there are large universities using open source. St. John's University in Queens, New York is using the same product that we are. NYU has libraries that are using the same product that we are. And there are a lot of academic libraries that left the commercial sphere. And so we started doing our homework on open source. And although I wasn't surprised, in Marshall Breeding's Technology Guide, every year he publishes a large article that talks about satisfaction with both ILSs and with the ILS vendor. And you see in both these boxes here, Opals, Apollo, and Koha take top marks. These are open source products. You see where Innovative lands, Innovative Millennium. And of course, there are a lot more people using Innovative, but the statistics were weighted, so they should fall in the same place. So I felt, you know, for the money that I spent, they should be in the top 5, and they're not. And I'm not the only one who feels that. So we started looking at what was recommended, and we started experimenting. So the first experiment was with a system called Mandarin, and we're actually running this OPAC for a special collection. I'll show it to you in a little while. You can run this open source without paying anything. You just download the software and load up your records, and you could be running it without any problem. For a little bit more money, you can sort of customize it a little bit more. This is a collection that we share with 2 of the law schools in New York, and we pay $1,000 to run this OPAC the way we want it to run. And MediaFlix has adopted it, and they built their Opals OS OPAC out of that, which got the number 1 and 2 ratings in a number of categories. But both Opals and Apollo are really geared toward the K through 12 market. I wouldn't even say 12. I mean, it's more like K through 9. Some of the features you don't see here that we got rid of are really very childlike and not appropriate for an institution of higher education. So then we said, well, what are academic libraries buying? What ILSs are academic libraries buying? And in the automation marketplace for this year, you see the breakout. This is the number of sale contracts just for this year, or I should say last year, by ILS vendor. And Millennium still has the lion's share of the market. They had 16 contracts sold. And you'll see libline Koha had 9, and ByWater Koha had 15. Libline and ByWater are both support companies that host the ILS for you and will do the migration for you. They're two different companies. They have two different philosophies that I'll get into in a little while, because it made a difference in which support company we chose and why we chose it. So after we did our homework, we sort of settled on the possibility of going with either a company called Evergreen. Evergreen is supported by a company called Equinox. That's their main support group. They have the lion's share of the market. And you can see the coverage of Equinox. It's very, very popular in this country. It doesn't have a lot of reach outside of the United States. But I think you could see that it is growing. And from what I have read recently, they are doing very well. And they will be growing even more. Right, so that's Evergreen. It comes out of the University of Georgia. Oh, not the University of Georgia, the Georgia County Library Systems, I think, Pines. So they created it. And this is a location map for Koha libraries. Koha came out of New Zealand, and it was developed by public librarians who did have a budget shortfall and needed a new library system. So you see how widespread they are. And I think if you're going to consider going open source, it's important to know that the system you select is being widely used so that the users group has a lot of people contributing, and you're not there on that lonely road all by yourself. So we definitely considered, is this system growing? Is it moving forward? Are there a lot of people contributing to it? And then we went visiting. Right? Nothing like a visit. We went visiting OPACs. Which OPACs do we like? How do they function? What features do we like about Evergreen? What features do we like about Koha? And we didn't limit ourselves to their OPAC. We used those maps, and we found like libraries and not like libraries nearby, and we went knocking on their door, and we said, hey, can you show us the staff module? I would suggest that you all do that, because you don't get to see the staff side when you're looking at these OPACs, and it makes a big difference. One of the libraries we visited was just a half a block away from us. It was called Polytech, and it was recently bought by NYU. They were an engineering library. So we went down. We really wanted to see what the serials look like in their staff module, because serials are very important to law libraries. Right? And this is one of the reasons why Innovative is so popular in law libraries, because they have a strong serials module, and they could handle the complicated frequency patterns. So we get to Polytech, and they actually didn't outsource it because they're an engineering school. They hired a graduate student who loaded it all up for them, migrated all of their information, and it was running quite nicely. So I don't think it's that complicated to do, and he got an A for his project. But when we got to the serials module, they said, well, we don't use it. And we said, what do you mean you don't use it? We don't have any print serials anymore. We only have 12. We transferred everything to digital. And Maria and I looked at each other, and we were like, how many serials did we cancel this year? Maybe serials is not all that important in the coming future. And we've canceled hundreds of serials because of budget cuts in the last 3 years. I'm sure I'm not alone in saying that. We still have 942 titles, something like that, to deal with. But it did make us pause and think, what does the future for library services hold? What material will we be processing, and what is important to us? Right? We also went to visit NYU Medical School, and we met Ian Walls, who was a librarian on staff there. Ian also brought their library from an innovative Millennium environment to an open source Koha environment. He also did it by himself. And it's important when you go and meet these people because you don't know where they're going to show up later. In the end, we selected Koha by ByWater Solutions. And it wasn't because the owners of the company are Lord of the Rings freaks and decided to name their company after ByWater, which is a town in Lord of the Rings where a great battle took place. It was because they had such great reviews in the literature, because they are very energetic. They are young people, and they are very excited about working in an open source environment with libraries. They are not all librarians. They are techies. They have some librarians there to help them understand what you're saying if you're having a communication gap. And that's Ian Walls. Ian Walls left NYU and is now working at ByWater Solutions. So I knew they had someone with experience with innovative and had already done a migration. There are some things you could do about staffing when you're going to an open source if you have to do the migration. Right? You could do it yourself if you have the staff. And in fact, our IT staff was really excited with the idea of going to an open source. But, Lloyd, you guys are really busy, aren't you? Underpaid and understaffed, exactly. And the thought of asking Phil to give up somebody for 6 months for this project, I couldn't even ask him because I knew how crazed they were over in the IT department. So that really is not a viable source. Now, I could have hired somebody from my staff. I could have gone to the dean and said, hey, I need a techie person on my staff. But what happens when the project is over? Right? It's not a full-time job anymore. And what if it's like Ian, or actually Columbia had the same situation. They had some, because they're looking at Koha, they had somebody who was going to do their migration for them and left, went to a programming company. I don't think it's a good choice not to outsource the migration because you will lose that institutional knowledge, whereas if you're contracting with a company, the company stays viable. That institutional knowledge rests with the company, and you have your history there. So I'm glad that we decided to outsource the project, that we decided to let ByWater host our database and be responsible for it. And I think it's a good way to go because it would be awful if Ian had been working for me and did this migration and then left. And he had all of the knowledge, and NYU Medical then sort of got stuck because they didn't have anybody else there to pick up the pieces. Another reason we chose Koha, I already told you, it's widely adopted throughout the world. They have a lot of support. These are 3 big pieces of the support. They have a well-developed wiki. There is a bug site where people are constantly monitoring and fixing bugs and loading patches. They have an extensive jQuery library where you could just copy the jQuery and put it into your system to make it do whatever it is that you're copying that jQuery for. So it empowers you because there are a lot of things that you can just take and copy and put into your system without bugging Ian. But at the same time, Ian is very happy to help out and customize a lot of our features for us. So these are just some quick facts about Koha. Recently, the users group met in Madison just last month. So I was in Madison last month. The users group for Koha was sort of like CALI when it first started. There were maybe 75 people there. It was just 75 people who talked about Koha and exchanged ideas about the code that ran Koha and what future development plans they had for their library. We talked about what the different libraries are doing with their system and how they're improving it. We also talked about releases. So there is a community and there are standards, and Up until this year, the releases were sort of just whenever the community decided they were going to issue a release. And now we decided that we, the community of Koha, which includes me now, will have a major release every 6 months. So every 6 months there'll be a major release. The bugs will be ongoing releases. So there are some standards there. Now I was going to tell you a little bit about the difference between ByWater Solutions, which is the company that we supported, and another company called Libline, which was purchased by PTFS. We originally started our project with Libline. In the middle of their sales pitch to us, they got bought by PTFS. And PTFS has a different philosophy of open source than the rest of the Koha community. So they will develop code for Koha, and they will not release it for 18 months. They will only release it to their clients. And then they will release it to the community 18 months afterward. It made us a little bit nervous because that's not really open source or the philosophy of open source. And then I got nervous about branches off the code. Right? So if everybody else is moving along this direction and sharing their code and seeing how things work together, and you have this other company that goes out in their own direction and then comes back later, whatever they wrote has to fit in with the main branch. And I don't really think that always happens so smoothly. And so I broke off negotiations with Libline when they were purchased, and I focused more on ByWater Solutions. And so I just want to let you know that there are different philosophies of open source, and you should ask, if you're going to have your ILS hosted elsewhere, you should ask what their philosophy is and how they work. Right, so I'm just going to tell you a little bit about the migration before I take you on to the OPAC and the staff module. This is basically a suggestion for your timeline and key decisions that you should make. I think you should pick a go-live date that's between 12 and 18 months from the day you decide to migrate, regardless of your system. I think anything more than 18 months, people will lose interest, and anything less than 12 months will make your staff crazy, right? Because there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. I also think that you should have a separate go-live date and a separate migration date, and there should be a month's time in between that. And that is because you will need to shake out the database after the migration takes place. And that can't happen on the same day as your go-live date, which is what happened to us. Right? So I also think that you should pick a time when this happens that is slow for your library. So for us, it was June. We decided our go-live date was going to be June 1 because classes had ended. We have summer classes, but not extensive, and they're only in the evening. So it was going to be slow, and June 1, we picked June 1. I also picked June 1 because our contract with Innovative ended on July 1. Right, so you have to decide, when are you going to tell your commercial vendor that you're leaving them? You have to look at your contract, because your contract will tell you what your notification requirements are. My contract had a 90-day notification requirement. Right? And I wanted to bring it to the end of the contract. I didn't have to worry about what funds might be due to me for a refund. I didn't think I'd get any, actually, but I'm cynical. So I chose June 1 because my contract ended on July 1 because it was slow in my library, and also because there were not a lot of people taking vacation that month. Right? So when you're going to migrate your information, where you're going to have training, you're going to have to tell your staff, guys, there's no vacation during this time. Right? And that's hard to do in the summertime. So you have to look at a lot of different variables when you're timing this out. The other thing I wanted to mention is that your commercial vendor will also be able to provide exit services. So they will help you extract the data from your system and help migrate it into your new system. In retrospect, I wish I had taken advantage of that service. The service was to me by Innovative for $4,500. I think the migration would have been easier if they had been more involved. although I can't be sure. I mean, you know, Monday morning quarterbacking is not always accurate. But you should ask about exit services. And there's going to be a time period when your library will be completely dead. Right? You're not going to want to order anything unless it's an emergency. You're not going to want to process anything because one system will be down and another system will be coming up. And data that's caught in between is often lost. Okay, and I already mentioned about the budget funds. Right? If you can, keep your budget intact in case your project is a failure. About a year before the migration, there's a lot of cleanup to do in the library, and these are some of the steps that we took. We cleaned our database up. We sent it out to Marchive to make sure that the authority records were accurate, that all of the global replaces were up to date, that everything was as pristine as we could make it. And included in that was making sure our inventory was good. And weeding the collection. We didn't want to bring any data over that for material that we were going to get rid of. So there was a major undertaking on the staff side to clean up the collection and make the material that we were going to be transferring over to Koha as accurate as possible. Right? There's always problems with inventory, but we did a good job. We focused on our circulating collection. It took a long time. But it was good because it helped us evaluate our collection and also evaluate our work process. And we changed some of our work process because of that. So, these are some of the things we did. We also invited the technical services librarians from the other area schools to look at the system. And they came on multiple occasions. They were very excited. They're very excited to see the final project. We haven't invited them back for the final project. But it was a really nice professional engagement. People came from all over New York City and New Jersey and brainstormed about what ByWater should do to make the staff module more flexible for people to work. So they got a lot of information out of it, and ByWater learned a lot about law libraries. They didn't have any law libraries in their clientele. There were no law libraries that had done a migration to an open source system. So they got a lot of information from the area schools, and we had a nice sort of bonding moment. And I know there are other schools in our area that are looking to see how this works out. And hopefully they will be as interested in Koha as I was, and can join the community and help us develop the system so that it works really well for law schools. So for the migration itself, this is what we did. We scheduled weekly conference calls. We transferred 20% of our files to the sandbox, and then we started testing the different parts of our ILS in the order that you see. Now, what I would have done differently, I would have transferred a much larger slice of our database, because what we found was that the testing site worked very differently from the final site. And our training was based on that testing site, and the training did not transfer over because the data behaved so differently with a larger slice of the pie. And so I would definitely migrate a much larger part of the database. And I would test it in a different order based on complexity, at least for my library. It might be similar for yours. Serials is always the hardest part of a law library. I would start with that because there's so much information there. And if you have an old collection like Brooklyn Law School does, you're going to have different standards of cataloging represented in your library. So material that was cataloged prior to 1990, a lot of those titles didn't have item records, which caused a problem with the migration because Koha mapped to item records and not Bib records, which is what Innovative does. So we had a lot of mixing and matching things. And I would also insist on having a Google Doc that you can share with your vendor who is doing the migration for you. It's much easier to keep track of what everybody is doing. Because when you go live, you don't want a disaster, which is what happened to us. Right, so go live date was June 1. We were dead in the water. We couldn't do anything. Our serials module wouldn't come up. We couldn't order anything. We couldn't receive anything. The only thing we could do is check books out, which is good. So the public side was not affected. Circulation worked terrific. Our patron records, our loan rules, all of that end was great because that's the easier side of the ILS. It's the back end when you're trying to process information and communicate with systems outside of your library where you're going to run into problems. So go live date was a real disappointment. And boy, at that time, I was feeling good about not taking that money out of my budget. But all was not lost. In fact, very little was lost. When we looked at the data, we lost very, very little data. This is incredibly good migration. It so happened that it was just in the wrong place. Right, so these are some of the things that happened because the data ended up in the wrong place. And it was up to Ian to find it, find out where he put it, and put it back in the right place. It was all about the mapping. And so those are many of the problems that we faced. I'm going to show you where we ended up because, as you know, it ended up being a happy story. You see how happy our students are. So this, compare this to the opening screen for our OPAC in Innovative. It's much different. We have designers on staff at the law school, so they helped us create the view that you're seeing now, and the color scheme matches the school's color schemes, and we get the logos. All of this is customized. We built it ourselves using the staff interface. The login is to our Active Directory. So, yeah, you would log in here, or you could log in here. We have a tag cloud. We kept the tag cloud open for students and for staff. If we run into a problem, we can turn it off for students. But this is an example of how we might use it. Okay, so we collected under 1L torts a list of titles for the entering students that are coming in August. If they want some study aids, they can go to our tag cloud. It's what they're accustomed to. You also have lists. You could have private lists or public lists. So this is one of the public lists. So if the librarians who are working with, I don't know, source checking for one of our journals, they might be able to create a list of materials that will help that particular team. Or if the moot court is preparing a problem and the liaison to the moot court team wants to create a list, or the VIS team, things like that. So they can keep those private, or they can put that out on the OPAC. They can use the tag clouds. Here, for example, is the link to that other open source OPAC, the Mandarin product that we're using for special collections. So you see that that's live, and we were able to add those links. I don't know where we went. There we go. And you see that it's fairly speedy. We haven't added our book covers yet. We have to hook that up to Amazon. So this is, as I said, it's not a finished product. There are still some things that are going on. The highlighting has been an issue. Right now we have it turned on, but what we are finding is that it also highlights our Boolean operators. So that's annoying when you see "and" highlighted everywhere. And we're going to have to go back, or Ian's going to go back and look at the script for that to see if he could change it. Otherwise, we'll turn it off until it has been fixed. And you see here, when we have an internet resource, now we have the link right on the front page, so ease of access to that. And let me just take a look at a record with you. All right, so here's our record. Here are our holdings. They have a very nice browse shelf feature. That looks like that. And we can start over. These are the links out to our services, interlibrary loan, our e-journals, etc. And this is the interface for a staff client. You can see it looks very, very different than what Innovative has provided us with. And for example, if you went into reports, our statistics aren't loaded yet, so I would be happy to run a report, but you're not going to get any results. But you see how the reports are set up. There are wizards and there are guided reports, so you can build customized reports. The reports are built out of SQL tables. Our support group, ByWater, will write the SQL queries if we can't figure it out ourselves, with a turnaround time of 24 or less than 24 hours, actually. And they have the top lists. All right, the reports that are always being run by libraries, the popular ones. So just to give you an example of what the interface looks like, there's a template. Anybody in my library can figure out how to use this template. It's not a crazy search for a list in Innovative. There's much more interactivity. And remember what I said about the staff sort of being stuck in that box, that ugly box, because it was unfriendly and required special training. Right? So on day 2, when they finally started working with it, when we got everything mapped back directly in the right place, they already started making changes to their own workflow process. They went into serials and they said, you know, these aren't really called volumes in this title. I'm going to change them because they're called reports. And so they're showing their own initiative and taking a more active role in the process of the information in the library operation. So on that end, I'm just really happy. That part has been really successful because it was important to me that the staff feel that they were part of the system, that it was going to make their lives easier. And one of the reasons was to get them more involved in processing the information. They're already doing it without even any prompting. It just came natural to them. So I'm very happy about that. And then you could see how the different modules work. Most of the customization takes place in the system preferences. And you could see the different areas. Here's the OPAC. And here are all of your selections. And you can see how extensive they are. Some of them are just turning things on and off. Other things are just adding some basic HTML text to make things work the way you want, or adding a jQuery to the script. So I am out of time, almost. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take questions. Yes?
Does the tech services staff still use the OCLC the same way, or is there any other change?
You have to press the button. It's actually, that's a very good question because
just keep talking. I'll talk.
Do the tech services staff still use OCLC the same way they were doing before?
So when we make orders, we download the records from OCLC. And in Innovative, there is an automatic processing function where you download it to Innovative and it uploads back into Innovative. That doesn't happen in Koha. So when we download OCLC records for Koha, we download them to a WordPad file on the desktop, and then we just upload it from the desktop. So it's an extra step because it's not done automatically. One of the weird things that we learned during the migration, some things you just couldn't know beforehand because it's quirky information. And you see on this screen, several years ago, the OCLC numbers changed from 8 digits to 9 digits. And Innovative was written to accept 8-digit OCLC numbers. And so what they did is they added the prefix. In our library, it's OCM, and in some it's OCN. And I'm not sure why it's in some Innovative libraries use OCM and some use OCN. And then they stuck the digit before the prefix. In Koha, and I think in systems that were written after OCLC changed the numbering system, the prefix is a prefix. It's in front of the 9-digit number. So what happened during migration, when we uploaded and checked the OCLC numbers to see if we already owned the item and tried to match it, nothing matched because Innovative's OCLC numbers had that OCM stuck in the middle of it. So we wrote a script to strip it and match it back up, and now it works perfectly. Yes?
Do you do electronic invoicing? Did you have issues with the vendors who supply you with electronic invoices and with your comptroller?
We don't do electronic invoicing, so we didn't face that problem. We're not that big.
What about binding?
We don't bind anymore either.
So you will be phasing out Innovative completely, right?
Yes, on June 30th will be our last day with Innovative, although we have not added any data to Innovative since May 20th. Like I said, we were dead, really dead in the water for a few weeks, and I never saw a staff so anxious to work after not working for 2 weeks, and Karen knows them. Everyone's sitting at, when can we use it? When can we use it? Yes.
I know that you guys, with III, had like your own server. Do you host this yourself as well, or is this hosted by whatever support company?
The support company is hosting it for us, although they also migrate to self-hosted systems. They have a preference for hosting it themselves, so they could do global updates. And it was a little bit more expensive if you hosted it on site, but I don't know. It was only like, it wasn't even $1,000 more. It was very reasonable.
A lot less than what Innovative wanted. Because you mentioned Innovative wanting so much, that was one of your concerns and for not wanting to go with them.
Yeah, it's the bang for the buck. I mean, I understand, they're a for-profit company. They need to make a profit. But, when you start charging people for RSS feeds, there's something wrong with that. Yeah.
Can you compare the total costs, if you can say what your III maintenance costs would be versus what any costs are going to be for this?
I am spending now 25% of what I spent on III.
And
without the migration. With the migration, it was a little bit, maybe like half. So that was only for 1 year's expense for the migration, but my support's about a quarter of what I would spend.
And then you mentioned discovery platforms, like you were looking at the III one. How does this play with something like that? And do you have a discovery, or is it just an OPAC interface?
It's just an OPAC interface, yeah. I didn't factor, if I had added Encore onto the bill, the percentage I would be paying, you don't pay extra for that interface, because it's there, that's how it runs. So that would be probably between 15 and 20% then of the total bill. They quoted me $15,000 if I wanted to add Encore onto my base package. I didn't buy it, so I'm not bound by any contract confidentiality clauses. Yeah.
Do you use proxy servers, and
Yes.
How did the integration go with that?
Well, a proxy server is run through the school's IT system. It's not run through the library, so nothing changed. Did you have a question?
Yes. I just wondered if your catalog solved the issue we face when you get hundreds of results and many of them are the same title in different formats.
We actually made that decision a few years ago as a group at the recommendation of our lead cataloger to have separate records for the different versions because the coverage was different. So that was an active decision to do that. So we do, but we did it on purpose.
What's now, though, is on the catalog. My name's Karen, and is the icon demonstrates that it's a different format. And and I think the students, I don't know about the faculty, are used to that kind of representation because of the public library catalog tends to use it, and also their academic authors do. So it's pretty seamless. Faculty,
They're going to like it. They will.
yeah, they have a book, you know what I'm talking about, the book or the, yeah, right, the little computer symbol, yeah, and that really helps.
One of the things on the OPAC that we still have to do is put we have 6 floors in the library, so right now you just see the call number, so it's not a very good finding.